Here on KGRA Radio, welcome to the Richard Dolan Show, where every week we fight the good fight. Greetings, it's June 25th, 2018. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, we've already passed the summer solstice. It never ceases to amaze me how quickly time goes by, partly because everything, for me, seems to be moving at high speed. I've been busier these days than I can ever remember being, and that's saying something since my life has been crazy busy for years and years. And still, things continue to ramp up. It's all good because maybe, just maybe, some of us are feeling that despite the undeniable craziness of our world, there are positive changes happening. I'm thinking about the possibility of a sea change happening in the culture relating to UFOs. I don't know, maybe it's a decade of ancient aliens, whatever you think about that show, for better or for worse. Maybe that's having an effect on the broader culture. A decade also of YouTube, maybe doing the same. For me, from my perspective, I really can't deny any longer that it looks like a generational shift is happening, and that old perspectives are wearing away in favor of new perspectives. Time will tell, but this is what it's looking like to me. Without a doubt, I'm getting more and more people asking me about UFOs and everything connected to it, so I think that's something. I'll quickly mention that I have a new website, Richard Dolan Members. It includes my analyses of UFOs, geopolitics, false flags, and much more in the form of video, audio, blog posts. It's grown rapidly. New content goes up several times every week. I would just say go visit sometime and see what I'm up to there. Same with my YouTube channel, where I'm putting up new content every week. For years, I let that channel lie fallow, but those days are gone. New material going up there all the time. Go look for the rollout of my new series of videos called Intelligent Disclosure. That will be coming very soon. And that also happens to be the name of my new Facebook page, Richard Dolan Intelligent Disclosure. Go there as well. And while you're at it, go check out my Twitter feed, richdolan@twitter.com. Of course, you can continue to find me here at KGRA Radio every week doing this show. It's a new era, and I'm doing everything I can to bring lots of content to you. It's all about remembering that in a world filled with deception and distractions, there is something that is real. It's called the truth. And never doubt that the truth can make you stronger and make you better. My guest for tonight is Kathleen Marden. Kathy has been researching and writing about UFOs for quite a while now. She is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, who were the first well-publicized UFO abductees way back in 1961. Kathy has written excellent books in conjunction with Stanton Friedman and Denise Stoner. She is currently the director of Mufon's ERT, that's Experiencer Research Team, where she has developed an important database of information relating to people who have had abduction and other forms of contact experience. She is an extremely smart, logical, and compassionate person, and a great positive presence to those of us interested in UFO research. Please enjoy this pre-recorded interview I did with Kathleen Marden. I'm here with Kathleen Marden, and we're in Toronto, and we're both at the Alien Cosmic Expo conference together for this pre-recorded interview. Kathleen, it's such a pleasure to have you on the program.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Rich.
Yeah. I don't think we've done a one-on-one interview in the past
think we
before.
have either.
We've seen each other for years at conferences and chatted with each other and had some very good conversations, but not done an interview.
Yes.
And I'm excited because I would say over the years that I've been researching this phenomenon, I find myself getting tugged inch by inch, foot by foot, deeper into the really strange elements of this phenomenon. And I'll just say that, 20 plus years ago, when I first started researching UFOs, I would say in all seriousness, well, I'm only going to research UFOs. I'm not going to get into anything weird. So I would say, like, no abductions, no crop circles, no animal mutilations. We're going to stay away from that. And I realized that that's like going to this amazing ocean, this beach, and just putting your one toe in the water, deciding this is all I'm going to do. I mean, the UFO subject includes so much strangeness, and particularly where the rubber meets the road is where individuals are having direct experiences with these intelligences, and that's really what you have been researching all these many years.
I have been researching that for many years, but when I started out, I joined the Mutual UFO Network. I underwent training to become a certified field investigator, and I was a nuts and bolts investigator at the beginning. I missed so much by only looking at the nuts and bolts part of this because there is so much more. And eventually I was led, kicking and screaming almost, toward the acceptance that part of this involves paranormal phenomena, and such as intelligently controlled light orbs seen in people's homes, for example, things that might fly off shelves immediately after an encounter where these individuals are taken to the craft. Trying to verify whether or not it was even possible for the human body to pass through a solid surface. And I was particularly interested in this in the case of Jenny Henderson that I investigated for I wrote about it in my book, The Alien Abduction Files. I didn't investigate it for that. It was a long-term investigation in the state of New Hampshire. Credible woman, credible family, multi-generational abductions, where there was a lot of paranormal activity that took place as well. In 2012, Denise Stoner and I conducted our first study of experiencers. We had 25 people in a control group and 50 people who were experiencers. We asked them 50 questions. This was a commonality study, and we discovered about 23 commonalities among experiencers that were not common among the general population. And one of those was that 88% of the experiencers in our study stated that they had paranormal activity in their homes.
Now, I really hope that we can talk a lot more about this study that you and Denise Stoner did, because it's really important. So when we define someone as an experiencer, we're talking about someone who has had they have identified themselves as having had a UFO sighting or an alien encounter. How do you define experiencer in this case?
I define experiencer as those people who have had contact with non-human entities. We used to use the word abduction, and when I took my position in Mufon, I was the director of abduction research. But by popular demand, we ended up changing it to director of experiencer research, because so many people were coming to us and saying, look, I wasn't abducted.
Exactly, they're not all abductions.
Right. That
it's much bigger than this.
Some people are having positive contact. There are all sorts of contact with different groups with different agendas.
So of that population then, you and Denise, your findings are that 88% of those people, so basically 9 out of 10, roughly speaking, have had other types of experiences that we would describe as paranormal, like ghosts or poltergeists or other things like this. Is that what?
Well, shadow entities for some people, but they believed that this was connected to their contact with UFO, non-human entity experience. And I woke up to something that I had never realized as the result of this study we did in 2012. And that is, after a UFO landed on my grandparents' farm way back in April of 1966, there were 2 witnesses to this who saw it coming in for a landing. It left physical trace evidence on the ground. And all of a sudden, we started to have this paranormal experience in my childhood home. And we had not had it before that. Some people have written back then that it was prevalent all along. I asked my brothers about this because I did not remember any of that growing up in that home. My brothers confirmed that it happened after that UFO landed. and they were observing these light orbs. Things were flying off shelves. Doors would open and close. I observed a little of this, but then I went off to college.
This is the kind of thing that would drive traditional UFO researchers crazy, because and I would include myself in this, like, we would really just love for this phenomenon to behave itself, to be in a nice, tidy little box. So if it's extraterrestrials visiting in metal spaceships, as, people in the 50s were basically characterizing this, then great. Then we can understand that. We can say they're men and women or beings that are coming here from another place, another planet, let's say. And by the way, if anyone hears rumbling from time to time, we're right outside the Toronto Pearson Airport. So every now and then an airplane's taking off right outside our room. But the thing is, we want, or at least I would want, for the phenomenon to be easily comprehensible and not to merge into these other areas that we would call paranormal. We want to keep it separate, but it doesn't seem to behave that way, and your own research is definitely showing that.
And I'm a scientific researcher. I look for scientific evidence, but I had to go kicking and screaming again into accepting the evidence that this was real. And I do have physical evidence in terms of photographic evidence, of video, and even of some non-human entities that I can't deny that. I say it would be scientifically dishonest. Mm-hmm. And I have actually had my own observation of one of those intelligently controlled light orbs.
My goodness. Well, could you describe what you yourself saw then, when that was, and what actually happened?
I can tell you about that. I was living in Colorado at the time. I had 2 young children, and my children and I were back visiting my mother. Mm-hmm. My son, my 5-year-old son, was in the bedroom next to mine, and this was a bedroom where a lot of this activity took place. I had completely forgotten about it by then, but I heard my son romping around that room, making a lot of noise, wreaking havoc during the night. He woke me up. I finally got up to tell him to go back to bed, and I opened the bedroom door. I'd left the night light on in that room, and there he was running around, chasing this light orb, trying to bat it. And he was having a great time with that thing, and it seemed to be having a great time with him. Of course, being a nuts and bolts researcher, I was looking for any kind of explanation. Could it have been headlights? No, it was not headlights. Could it have been ball lightning? No, the conditions were not right for ball lightning, and it had gone on for too long a period of time. And
so
finally,
how did the whole thing end? So you walk in, you see you doing this. How did that whole thing turn out?
It ended where I was so startled. I grabbed him, I picked him up, took him into my bedroom, put him into my bed, and that was the last thing I remembered until we were waking up in the morning.
Well, when you're 5 years old, that's old enough, just old enough to be able to tell a kind of coherent story of what happened. Am I right?
Yes.
So what did your son say to you about what that was?
I asked him what was going on in there, and he said, "Oh, well, that's the guy who comes to play with me during the night."
Oh, my God.
Oh, that was startling, too.
It's. I don't want to get off track from your research, but I'll just say, I've encountered a number of other individuals in this field. Some are experienced researchers who have had their own childhood experiences of visitation in their bedroom. I know you've talked to many of these people, too. Some of the individuals that I'm thinking of have had visitations of what do not appear to be extraterrestrial entities per se, or if they are extraterrestrials, they don't look like extraterrestrials. Some of them seemed almost quite very human. And in one case, there's a gentleman who, at the age of 5 and 6 years old, for some time, would be taken out of his bedroom and taken onto what he described as a school bus in his backyard in the middle of the night. But it would fly, and it would take him to a different place where there would be people, but he wouldn't really be able to see them very carefully, very clearly. And they would be testing his abilities along with other children for like psi ability. Like, let's see, can you move this ball with your mind to that girl over there, and so forth. And this went on for, as far as he can tell, maybe a year, and then it just stopped. Just odd. I didn't mean to move the conversation into that direction, but I'm just constantly struck by the strange encounters that children will have, and as adults that they will remember with crystal clarity.
And that experiment that you just described has been described by many experiencers, and even people who are considered to be highly credible, adults who have evidence.
Right. So what do you think in that particular case? What have you given thought to what you think is happening when children are taken and are being tested in this manner or that manner? Do you have a thought about what this might represent?
Well, I can give you some statistical information based upon my research. We do know that people who have these experiences become more psychic or intuitive than they were previously.
But this is a key finding.
Yes.
In your research with Denise.
And not just with Denise. I have just completed a comprehensive 3-year study on experiencers for the Mutual UFO Network with some members of the experiencer research team and also with Dr. Don C. Donderi, who is a retired psychologist and statistician from McGill University. And so we're looking at statistical evidence here. Also, the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters has done their study of more than 4,000 experiencers. In Mufon, we have 516 who we selected to keep their evidence, and we broke this down through a psychological test that Dr. Donderi administered to identify those individuals who were actually abductees, who had what was called UFO abduction syndrome, meaning they had the emotional signature and the knowledge of having been an abductee. So we've done a lot of research here. I'm on FREE's board of directors and a research associate for FREE as well. And we both agree about experiencers becoming more psychic. They also engage in telepathic communication. Many receive downloads of information. The majority say that they were taken as children the first time. The vast majority were under 20 years old when it occurred. They become empathic, which is a kind of psychic ability where they can feel other people's emotions. Some of them are so empathic, they know what's going on inside other people's bodies in terms of the health of the body. So we have some highly compelling information that we're going to be sharing with the public through the publication of FREE's book, Beyond UFOs, the Study of Consciousness, and also at Mufon's International Symposium in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, in July of this year. I'm going to be doing a presentation on our findings, and Don Donderi is going to be doing a presentation on his part in these findings. There's a lot of psychic activity taking place here, paranormal activity, and we hear the story over and over again of these children being taken to a craft where they are seated a lot of times in a circle, where there are orbs that are floating through the air.
Are they different colors?
Some are blue.
I've heard
a lot of blue.
Color ones. I see.
Yes. And Susie Hansen from New Zealand who worked with Rudy Shield, who has recently retired from Harvard University and is the director of FREE now. So they wrote a book on Susie's experiences, mostly Susie writing it. But she had this when she was a child, and she came to realize that the consciousness of her son that she would have years later was inside this orb. And she, as a child, would use her mind in order to elevate this orb and to pass it across the room to a child on the other side of the room. It was a game that human children were playing.
That is just fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I want to just go back to one thing you said a few minutes ago about empathy. And if I recall, you had stated that as much as 95% of experiencers felt that they had become highly empathetic. Is that accurate?
Not empathetic. Empathic.
Empathic.
Separate empathic
Beyond
from empathetic. Because a lot of people are empathetic,
Right.
and they have not had contact of this type.
So empathic, like literally
So
feeling
they
those
actually
emotions of other people.
feel other people's emotions.
Well, it
yes.
just occurred to me, and that's 95%. Did I remember that correctly?
95% among our abductee group, a little lower than that, about 85% among the what we called the experiencer group. And then we had a contactee group as well. Those who were having positive contact, 100% among that group.
That's amazing. So this is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it sounds to me that having contact in one way or another is almost certainly going to make you empathic. And what struck me as interesting is that that's like the opposite, as far as I can see, of being a sociopath or psychopath, which we will commonly hear described as someone who does not have the ability to appreciate or feel other people's emotions at all, or care about other people's emotions. So on that level, you really could say that the experience of having contact moves people out of, I mean, it's the opposite direction of being sociopathic. So you could see it as a very positive development, I would think.
Absolutely. Imagine what kind of planet this would be to live on if every human on this planet was empathic. We wouldn't have war. We wouldn't have greed. If you could feel the harm that you caused another individual,
Sure.
we wouldn't have that. We wouldn't have school bullying or adult bullying.
So true. That's so true.
I wonder if that's part of the alien agenda.
Wow. Well, they need to pick it up a little bit because there's 7.5 billion of us.
Yes, they do.
And, so, and I don't know about your neighborhood, but I know a lot of folks who need a little bit more of the empathy and empathic ability.
Absolutely.
So, well, anyway, that's quite fascinating. So, what other characteristics would you be able to share about individuals who've had abduction or contact or experiences that would be worth knowing about for us?
Well, I had been contacted by several Christian leaders who hypothesized that people were having these experiences, that they were all demonic, there was nothing extraterrestrial about them, and that they no longer had a godly cover, that their family had turned away from traditional religion. And so I wanted to test this hypothesis to see if it was true. And what I discovered is that more than 50% of these experiencers had taken part in traditional religion, had traditional religious beliefs, might have attended church. And so I looked further than that. And I know that there have been a number of academic studies on abductees, looking at changes that take place in abductees and also near-death experiencers. And what we discovered is that these people might have had religious beliefs, but the vast majority became more spiritual. So they weren't turning away from religion, they were developing this kind of consciousness, this spirituality. And that's another very positive move, I think.
Kathy, let's just take a very, very quick break. And I would like to come back to this idea because I know those individuals as well who were essentially Christian researchers looking into the abduction phenomenon. And I have a lot of respect for them, as I think you do too.
Yes.
But I had had a quibble with them then, and I would like to follow up on it. But let's just take a very quick break. We're at the bottom of the hour. I'm Richard Dolan here with Kathleen Marden, abduction researcher, niece of Betty Hill, co-author of books with Stanton Friedman and Denise Stoner, and just an amazing resource that we have in our community for UFO research. Here on KGRA Radio, we'll be right back.
Hi folks, Ray Sobbs here, stopping by to say thank you to all of our loyal listeners for all of your amazing support to all of us here at the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. As most of you know, and some of you may not, many changes are in effect during this time at the KGRA DB. The most significant being the move of the KGRA headquarters to Salt Lake City, Utah. We are in the middle of building new studios, installing state-of-the-art digital broadcasting hardware and software, and much more. During this period, you may notice some station downtimes or replay interruptions for brief equipment testing, but these issues will never take place during live programming. If at any time any of you have any questions regarding this announcement or any other inquiries, feel free to email me directly at racehobbs@kgraradio.com. We know you're going to be really proud of the upgrades being made as we continue to grow bigger and better. To be your contact for UFO paranormal talk radio across the planet, we are your KGRAradio.com.
I want you to meet the owner of Life-Changing Tea, Ronnie McMullen, because this will change your life. It's so good for you. And I love the fact that Ronnie McMullen is a former talk show host who knows talk radio. This is a guy who knows great health and came up with this amazing product called Get the Tea. I'm going to tell you all about it. Ronnie, welcome to the Mike Gallagher Show. How are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Mike?
I'm great. I got to hear how you went from talk radio to the CEO of Get the Tea.
It's a weird story. I'll make it quick. I got sick. And so as soon as I got sick, I looked for natural remedies, and next thing you know, I was in there getting stuff together and putting things together, learning about what makes you better and what doesn't, and the rest is history. That was 11, 12 years ago. People they're waking up, they're saying, you know what, we don't want the GMOs anymore, we don't want the garbage pesticides, herbicides, so we want to get cleansed, and that's exactly what Life Change Tea does.
To order, go to getthetea.com. Not available in stores. Go to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com.
This is Richard Dolan announcing a new exclusive content website, richarddolanmembers.com. I've been working on this for a long time. Unique weekly podcasts that you won't hear anywhere else, fresh articles and blog posts, a special video series entitled Off the Cuff with Richard Dolan, regular Ask Me Anything style live chat sessions, and more. This is a full-featured member site where you will get my insights, my updates, and be able to interact directly with me. To learn more, go to richarddolanmembers.com. Hi, we're back with Kathleen Marden. I'm Richard Dolan here on KGRA Radio. And Kathleen, we were just talking about research that you had become aware of with these Christian researchers in the field of UFO abduction, who had argued, and they still argue, this is a very common thread among Christian ufology, that what we call abduction experiences are, in fact, not really extraterrestrial aliens. They are workings of demonic entities of one sort or another. I've often heard the phrase principalities of the air, this type of thing. And I've, I don't dismiss everything that they say about this, I think, but I have some issues with it. One of the things that I remembered from 15 years ago was the idea that if you simply pray to Jesus, pray to Jesus Christ, your abduction experiences will cease. So you encountered this as well when you were doing your research.
Yes, I have. And in fact, that is one of the suggestions out of 12 suggestions that we give to people. It's an easy one to try. And it doesn't matter what religion you are, even if you're an atheist, You can appeal to the highest intelligence, for example.
Right.
And it does work for some people. Now, either these...
In other words, if someone's having abduction experiences, they don't want them, they can pray to God, their God,
Yes.
their conception of God, for this to cease, and that sometimes will work, you're saying.
Yes, sometimes they can call out the name of Jesus Christ or Allah or Buddha or the one,
Right.
whatever. And these entities will leave. And some people say that if these entities are at all benevolent, that they would listen and they would leave. But I know also in my years I've been investigating UFOs and abductions for 30 years now. And I have evidence that not all of this is extraterrestrial, and that there's a lot of confusion because this appears to be interdimensional, and it all appears to be a matter of vibrational frequency. So I have discovered through research that I've done into the paranormal and working with people who are experts in the paranormal field, that it is a matter of a lower vibrational frequency, that in medical studies that were done in India, they did experiments on the consumption of alcohol. And as people would take more than 2 drinks within a short period of time, they were able to measure the vibrational frequency of that individual lowering. And over there, they actually believe that all alcoholics have these demonic or negative entity attachments.
I see.
Because of the lowering of the vibrational frequency.
For a very long time, I will just say, I had a difficulty in understanding what was actually meant when people would say higher and lower frequency. Because you hear this, one hears this very frequently in certain circles, and I just never felt, is this actually scientific? Is this a scientific concept that I'm actually getting, or is this just New Age jargon that someone's tossing out? And so I just, for the longest time didn't really know how to accept it, but I will say that I'm a little bit more open to it now. And Tracy and I listened to your lecture yesterday here at this conference, and you spoke a bit about this. And you were talking about some of the physicists that you had shared these concepts with, Claude Swanson and Rudy Shield. I know both of them.
Yes.
They're both very brilliant.
They are.
So what were they saying to you about this higher and lower vibrational frequency? What was relevant?
Well, I went to them initially when I wrote the Alien Abduction Files. Yeah. And in that book, Jenny Henderson spoke about being taken physically through a closed window. And my Aunt Betty and I used to discuss that a lot. And she said, well, if anybody told me that, I'd say I wanted to see the repair bill. And I would say, well, right. Maybe they have a higher level of science, more scientific knowledge than we have. Maybe they have different technology than we have. If they're coming here from another planet, they must. But she would always scoff at it. We used to
That's her generation. They
yes.
were just that was the nuts and bolts generation for sure.
It was very
Absolutely.
Much nuts and bolts. And so I asked Rudy and I asked Claude and I asked another theoretical physicist if this was even possible. And what they explained to me is that theoretically, everything vibrates at a certain frequency, and that it is possible for this to occur, and that it has even been accomplished on a very tiny scale in a laboratory. So we know that it's possible. We don't have the technology to do it, obviously. But they say if you can align frequency and phase, then atoms can interpenetrate, and that this could be a scientific explanation for how experiencers are taken through solid surfaces.
Well, I'm no physicist, but I know, and you know, and probably everyone listening knows that almost everything here is empty space. That what we touch as seemingly hard matter is in fact 99.9999, fill in your decibels, empty space.
Yes.
And that they seem solid to us because of the type of force, and again, I'm out of my depth here, but that they give off a force.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume what you're saying is that's related to the frequency
Yes.
and vibration. So if you were to change that, you could phase one object through another without a problem. And you were talking about earlier people being floated through walls, or I think you were saying this, and other researchers, we've talked about this for years and years and years, people being floated through seemingly solid walls. And so I guess that would be a way to explain it, right? If they're able to change the frequency temporarily of a being, hopefully not in a harmful way,
mm-hmm.
that you could float someone through, because it is all basically empty space.
Right. And academic studies have discovered that experiencers have the same characteristics as near-death experiencers.
Oh, let's talk about this, please. This is fascinating.
And so I developed my own hypothesis on this, and the psychic ability, the empathy, the becoming empathic, so much of these positive qualities that both share. And I was wondering, do experiencers have a near-death experience when this occurs and they're moved through a solid surface, when their atomic structure becomes highly energized and maybe comes apart? We've heard in the early days of Bud Hopkins talking about how experiencers felt they were coming apart when they were being taken onto a craft through this process. And theoretically, I wonder if the human consciousness, what you might call the soul, is actually separating from the body on a thread, just like occurs in a near-death experience. And then the body is reassembled. It all comes back together. But there has been a change that has taken place, and academic studies have demonstrated that.
I would love to see where the academic community is going to go with these types of ideas over the next generation or so. They just seem to be dragged along by the culture very unwillingly, for the most part. But it is interesting that there are some studies that discuss this. One of the folks here this weekend with us is Grant Cameron, and we all know Grant. And he's developed a very interesting theory on the connection between contact experience and those who have had near-death experiences. And he points out, too, like the Free study, I know he mentioned, showed a very high correlation between people who've had contact and have had near-death experiences. And he said, well, why? And his own theory, if I'm doing it correctly, is that, well, if you believe in only one life, then that seems very, very highly unusual, I guess you could say. But if you believe in multiple lives, his hypothesis is that very likely these people made a sole decision before they were born to have all of these types of experiences. I think I'm not doing justice to Grant's theory, but I think that's more or less something along the lines of what he said there. And I don't know, I mean, do you have any... But what you're saying is that the abduction experience is like a near-death experience. So you're saying something a little different here.
Yes, I think that when the human body is moved through a solid surface and through this interdimensional portal, you might call it,
right,
then the soul can separate, or the consciousness can separate from the human body temporarily, reconstruct, and then experiencers have these characteristics at an extremely
we're being kind of
statistically high rate.
remade in a sense, like you're being
Yes.
taken apart and put back together again with new capabilities and new abilities. I remember a couple of years ago chatting with two of the gentlemen involved in the Allagash abduction from 1976.
Yes.
So it was Jim Weiner and Chuck Foltz. Yeah, and they're both great guys, as you know.
Yes.
And Jack wasn't available, but Jim told me his story of him and his brother. And both of those two brothers had a remarkable transformation after that entire experience that they went through in 1976.
Yes,
Jim
their
had
art
said,
changed
Yeah.
completely.
Jim's art just went off to a completely new level. And Jack, I think, developed a really unusual mathematical ability.
Mhm.
I mean, much higher level than before. And they both traced it explicitly to that abduction experience.
Yes.
And I think that's probably typical,
Mhm.
or at least, if not typical, then common among abductees and experiencers.
It's transformational in a lot of people. And I'm not saying that everyone has a positive experience.
Right.
But in my research and Mufon study, we asked the question, if you could end your contact experiences today, would you? 71% said no, they would not end their experiences. Only 29% would want to end their experiences.
How do we, that's really interesting. So a significant majority, I guess, wanted to continue maybe to learn about what was going on, but there is a significant minority that were very deeply upset and maybe even traumatized. What do you consider is the primary reason for that disparity?
Well, I think that there are different types of entities with different agendas. Those who are having MyLab, or some people say MILAB, abductions, tend to have negative experiences. I have not talked to anybody who said, oh, this was wonderful, this was very positive, I developed all of these different abilities. As a result of this, it tends to be negative. Also, those who are interacting, being taken by reptilians. There are people who do have positive experiences, but there are more people who are having negative experiences where they are taken, they're being used for whatever purpose, they're not treated respectfully or with kindness at all. There are groups who have their own agenda for us and don't care a great deal about how we feel about it.
Are we able to generalize about the types of groups that are out there? Because one does hear a lot about negative reptilians. Mm-hmm. This is absolutely out there. So is that a fair statement that among your the groups that you have done, that you've surveyed, those people who've encountered reptilian beings are having negative experiences?
Well, I'd say that probably more than half are having negative experiences, yet those who are having positive experiences are very, very vocal about this and say it's not all negative. They've had wonderful experiences with these reptilians.
It's definitely true that people who've had experiences with reptilians have claimed, and this is particularly, I think, women, if I'm remembering this correctly, some of these experiences have been sexual experiences with reptilians and not pleasant in general. Can you speak about that at all?
Yes, many women have stated that they have sort of been raped by reptilians, and often they're shapeshifters, and that they will believe that it is a very handsome man, and then it transforms into this ugly reptilian creature, and they're being raped by this creature. I've spoken with men who seem credible. I don't have the physical evidence in these cases, but who say that they are engaging in sexual contact with female reptilians, and oftentimes it's consensual.
I actually spoke with a man, we're here in Canada, and this is a gentleman who was living in British Columbia near Vancouver. 4 years ago, I think I chatted with him, and he had a similar story of an encounter with a woman. I don't think they got to the point of having sexual relations, but they were getting close to that point, I think. But he actually said to me he went to her apartment, and it was very, very bizarre. Like, she was bizarre. There was a very strange being, or person, we'll say, who was in this apartment. She was very open with him about the fact that she wasn't from here, that she wasn't human. And he said there were odd physical characteristics about her. And she was very sexually forward with him. And the first time he met her, he thought that was great. And he said then as he actually got closer to her physically, it was disturbing to him. And all he could do was just get out. And he actually left without having a sexual encounter with her. And I'll just say, talking with him, my sense of him was that he was a very honest person. And he didn't seem like he was psychologically disturbed, to be perfectly honest with you. He seemed very normal. Just with a story that most people would think was a crazy story. But I don't think that he was crazy.
I've encountered the same kind of individuals. There seems to be a woman. There's one case that the Mutual UFO Network is investigating as we speak. And we have interviewed these two of the
a
three. A
female reptilian, you're saying?
A female, possibly reptilian.
Yeah.
This is a stripper and who lived in the same building with this man who, middle-aged, started to have contact, started to be taken to some kind of an alien environment where he described having sexual relations with this female. There was another man involved in this too, who was a friend of his, who ended up being taken as well. And he described this huge swimming pool and these Nordic-looking individuals who were around this swimming pool and told the story of Atlantis and ancient warfare, and even have captured grays on this craft, and it sounds like totally ludicrous.
Right.
They're willing to take lie detector tests. We're collecting evidence and information now. I don't know where it's going to end, but it's an ongoing investigation.
I always wonder, because this is going to be on YouTube before long, and there's going to be all kinds of people listening to this conversation, and they're going to be thinking, what are these people talking about? This is insanity. The only thing that I would say is that the longer you scratch below the surface of this reality that we live in, you find more and more of these types of stories. And one thing I've learned, and I know you've learned this, is that there are so many people walking around who have got these incredible stories, and they tell nobody. They tell no one. They're walking around with an encounter that they sometimes is traumatizing, sometimes it's transformative, but in any case, it's powerful and important, and they don't know how to tell people, because we're in a society where this is not supposed to be the case, and it's ridiculous, and so it's what an odd thing. Like, the most important thing to happen to someone in their life often, and they tell no one, because who can they tell? Right. And it's isolating and atomizing, and whatever else. Like, that's not the way to be dealing with this. This is really important, and you've got a whole huge population out there walking around by themselves.
And for me, even as a researcher and investigator with 30 years experience doing this, I have to fall back upon the evidence, because how do I know if somebody is credible or not unless there's some kind of evidence for it? Mm-hmm. But there are so many people walking around who have had these experiences. Maybe they have tried to tell somebody and they've been ridiculed. But one of the reasons that I set up Mufon's experiencer research team was to have non-judgmental listeners who would talk to these individuals, who would listen non-judgmentally. So people can go to Mufon.com. Mm-hmm. On Mufon's main page, scroll down to Experiencer Research Team, click on Learn More. That will take you to a page of our team. You will be able to be introduced to some of the members of our team, not all of them. But at the top of that page, it says Experiencer Questionnaire. This isn't the Experiencer survey I was talking about. It's a 30-question questionnaire. Click on that. If you want to speak to a non-judgmental listener who is only going to collect your information, then somebody on my team will get in touch with you and will speak with you. If you have evidence, we would love to collect your evidence. And if it's very good evidence that can be analyzed in a scientific laboratory, and we agree with you that it's that level of evidence, then we can have that done as well.
It's really wonderful that Mufon has you, Kathy, to be able to do this type of research. Mufon is the most public of all the UFO organizations, certainly in the Western Hemisphere, in the world, really. And, I don't think Mufon's always been deeply into, like, seriously, openly investigating the abduction or experience or phenomenon. I mean, there's always been that element to it, but it does seem that you've been instrumental in bringing that to a higher level of awareness. I think that's really important.
I have, and when I was asked to take this position, I discovered that there were no written protocols, for the investigation of abduction experiences. There was a paper on ethics related to this, but no protocols for field investigator training. So I spent the first year with a team of experts that I selected as consultants, and we developed the protocols for the investigation of abduction experiences. That was the first thing I did.
That's extraordinary. And did you have any examples of how to do this, or did you just develop what seemed to be the most logical steps? We may have to take this after the break, but I'm curious, how did you develop that?
I developed it with the help of Denise Stoner. And Denise Stoner is one of the most remarkable investigators I have ever met. She was selected to receive equipment and to work with funding from Robert Bigelow when Mufon was funded by Bigelow to investigate UFOs. So, and I was an investigator myself. I knew how to investigate, and I had applied that to the abduction phenomena.
That's really fascinating. Look, we're at the top of the hour.